Music for a video game has the potential to exponentially improve the atmosphere and storytelling of the game, especially when the game embraces a fantasy or sci-fi theme full of unfamiliar concepts and locations. Destiny 1 and 2, both of which are massively multiplayer online games by the studio Bungie, fall perfectly within both of those categories. They tell the story of the light and the dark, cosmic, unknowable forces harnessed by both good and evil to obtain magical powers. The conflict between these forces takes place far into the future, long after the golden age of humanity, who are now under threat from a myriad of alien races. Players take the role of guardians, warriors who are able to harness the light to wield elemental powers and resurrect when they die. The paracausal forces present serve as the fantasy aspect of the diegesis, while the setting fulfills a science fiction portion, making the franchise science fantasy. As a whole, the games use this atmospheric, transportational aspect of the soundtrack to the fullest extent. Composed mainly by Michael Salvatore and his collaborators, including Sir Paul McCartney, across both Destiny 1 and 2, the music heightens the gameplay experience, similarly to how music enhances a film. When it comes to games, however, properly contextualizing the music becomes significantly more difficult. With a film, every viewer will experience the music in tandem with the intended visuals, whereas in a game, the player can easily miss out on the intended experience, especially in a game like Destiny where players have free reign over the game space that they are currently in. Destiny faces an extra challenge to its sonic experience being a multiplayer game. Those you are playing with may talk over the music. The magic of Destiny's soundtrack goes so far as to even counteract this challenge on occasion, exemplified by the Spacewalk section of Destiny 2's Deepstone Crypt Raid, a 6-player activity in which players solve puzzles, kill bosses, and get sweet loot. Players are tasked with jumping across platforms outside of a space station while serenaded by a lovely track titled Deepstone Lullaby. Within the game's community, there's a sort of rule. Players encourage others to mute their mics and simply listen to the track as they leap along the exterior of the station.
Okay, from this point forward, we are silent. Not quiet, silent.
In order to gain a better perspective on the impact of this track on the experience, I gathered a group of friends in order to run through Deepstone Crypt. When we reached the spacewalk, we all muted our mics, immersing us in the music and the visuals. Afterwards, I asked them to describe the emotions that they felt while the track played and they looked out into the vast emptiness of space.
I think for the environment, it really adds to the feeling of wonder as you're hopping through space and looking through over on everything. It makes you feel as if you're small and not much in the world, which really, in truth, in-game Guardians are not.
It made me feel like I was making history, in a sense. Like I was doing something that has been tried, but never finished.
So, Deepstone Lullaby, I thought it added a lot to the whole environment of specifically that section. The whole area around it feels very like magical and it's like wondrous, like looking out into the space and like hearing that music, because it starts off very soft and then it kind of like it jumps in intensity and it just really adds to the whole environment of it. Which I also thought was really powerful in terms of the whole context of the the game because it like it just made the whole thing feel more like intense, I guess, like we were actually doing something.
I think the song gives it a really heart-wrenching atmosphere while remaining cryptic, and it really sells the point that you're in deep space. I think it really draws the player in.
I feel like Deep Stone Lullaby reminds me that games are meant to be art. In between the chaos of the Destiny raiding experience, Bungie gives you some beautiful atmosphere to the world they've crafted. The world definitely wouldn't be the same without it.
The track, while calming, also evokes a feeling of uneasy doubt, as from a story perspective, players have just harnessed the paracausal powers of the darkness for the first time, powers that have traditionally been used exclusively by the bad guys. I find that elements of the song play into that uncertainty of using something considered evil in order to do something good, notably the slow trailing piano at the beginning of the song. The track also plays into the excitement that players feel at having access to a whole new subset of powers as built into a complex, layered piece before returning to the piano from the beginning, now supported by deep, stable tones, suggesting a wondrous acceptance of the Guardian's newfound power source.
His name is Oryx, the Taken King. And he's coming for you, Guardian.
Destiny 1's third expansion, The Taken King, focuses on Oryx, a being referred to as a god. Oryx ruled over the Hive, a hostile alien race in conflict with humanity. As a Hive god, Oryx represents the greatest threat to humanity that the Guardians had ever faced at the time of the Taken King's release. The main campaign in this expansion has the players battling through Oryx's massive ship, the Dreadnought, to stop his attack on the solar system, an attack enacted in an attempt at bitter revenge for the killing of his son Crota. The final mission culminates in a climactic battle against the Taken King himself. During the fight, a track titled Regicide plays, highlighting the ominous and world-ending powers of Oryx. The song begins with 2 sets of 6 notes each, with each tone flowing into the next, presenting a twisted and looming sense of regality. While these notes play, Oryx reveals himself to the player, absorbing the darkness in the room and swearing to get revenge. As the song progresses, tension builds, reaching an intense peak with booming power, representative of Oryx's threatening aura. Throughout the track, Salvatore makes use of half steps up and down the musical scale in order to intensify the tension. Each step feels like an attack in the battle, blows traded between Oryx and the player. Once the track hits its peak, it begins to descend, doing so in a manner that makes the player feel as though they are weakening Oryx, drawing him closer and closer to death. When the player finally finishes off Oryx, a cutscene plays where Oryx takes himself, preventing death and allowing him to escape. The screen fades to black, and... the beginning of Regicide plays again, now slightly modified to have a darker feeling to it, signifying that Oryx is still very much a threat, and a much more powerful one now. By reusing the Regal beginning, the Destiny team tells the player that Oryx's last-ditch attempt at survival has made him even more dangerous to humanity.
We want the tone to impress urgency on you. We want you to start to feel like, wow, this Oryx, he's here, he's coming for me and my friends, and we have to stop him. Because we want to wear his like a hat.
As a result, the Guardians must make yet another journey into Oryx's dreadnought to kill him once and for all, this time in a raid, King's Fall. Perhaps the most iconic raid amongst all 16 across both games, King's Fall has players fight their way through some of Oryx's strongest soldiers to reach him. During the final boss fight, the song Last Stand plays. This track keeps up with the regality of Regicide while also conveying the fast pace and frantic fight that comes along with the raid environment. Choral voices ring out above the rest of the track, both emphasizing the power of Oryx and creating tension. The percussion on this track mimics the clashing of swords, yet again driving home the climactic nature of the battle that accompanies it. Each of the tracks accomplishes the same goal, atmospheric storytelling through music. Regicide provides Oryx with a more confident demeanor at the beginning, becoming more frantic as the song draws to a close while narratively Oryx becomes more desperate. Last Stand begins eerily, reflecting the unknown power that Oryx now holds, but quickly builds pressure and anxiety. This truly is Oryx's last stand, as well as the Guardian's last chance to stop him. Oryx's twisted, piercing howl as the Guardians kill him puts an abrupt end to the song, and players are left with no music, allowing them to relish in their accomplishment. Bungie loves to use music as a storytelling device, and I can think of no better example than the lead up to the Hive God Savathun. As Oryx's sister, Savathun is also incredibly powerful, though she prefers to enact her plans from the shadows, manipulating and outsmarting others. Prior to her arrival in-game as yet another harbinger of the end in Destiny 2's 6th expansion, the Witch Queen, Savathun had been spreading her influence throughout the world of Destiny through her own piece of music, Savathun's Song. Lore-wise, the song is known as a viral chant that spreads from one person to the next, permanently storing itself in the minds of all who hear it. Once lodged in someone's mind, they are then vulnerable to Savathun's psychic abilities and manipulations. As far as I can tell, the earliest mention of Savathun's song is a strike mission with the same name from early in Destiny 2. From there, the song was not mentioned until the 4th expansion, Shadowkeep, where Savathun's song began to appear as a leitmotif in other tracks. Savathun's song appears in a majority of the tracks off of the Shadowkeep soundtrack, signaling her influence over the events of the expansion, though it wouldn't be until a few months later when players began to discover what it truly was through dialogue with various characters.
Wanna bet?
Oh, you never change.
And you still owe me Glimmer.
In my defense, you were dead. And I don't make much as Crucible handler.
You know, when I walk the streets of the city, the children demand I carry them. I do so, but I ask them to sing me a song. A song of their people.
No, I refuse.
Then you can pay me. A Titan is only as good as his word.
But I don't know any songs.
Make something up.
Oh, let me see. Eris hummed a few bars on the moon. How did it go? I'm on the moon. It's made of cheese.
That is awful.
It's not my song. It's Eris's.
Hey, Three Eyes. Shax says you sang him a little ditty.
What?
Shax, Chunky Titan, One Horn. Did you sing him a song on the moon?
What a senseless question.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Stay off this channel. Should I need you, I'll call. Wait.
I didn't hang up.
Does that oaf still keep that skull with him?
In the tower? Yeah, hangs it over his spot. I wouldn't have tangled with that thing.
Desperate times. This Lil Ditty. Did it go?
That would be the one. What is it?
Savathun's song. It's a viral chant. It can never be unheard. Now that Savathun has announced herself, relics of the dark across the system have begun to awaken. Tell Shaxx to remove that skull immediately.
Sister, I already tried.
What did that oaf say?
No.
As the story progressed to the 5th expansion, Beyond Light, players began to see more references to her song. More major characters had begun to sing it. Crow, a guardian who the player works alongside, could be heard whistling the tune while hanging around the command center. Lakshmi too, the representative leader of a faction called the Future War Cult, leads a tirade against fallen refugees, referencing a song of the people sung to the tune of Savathun's song.
Have you heard the song of the people echoing through the city? Rise up as one, march toward the sun. The words of people reaching for dawn in this endless night. People who have still not given up hope. Neither have I.
As players heard her song pop up across the game, they began theorizing that it signified her arrival, that her plan was already in motion before the Witch Queen expansion released. In the final season of the year, Season of the Lost, players discovered that Osiris, a powerful guardian who had lost his paracausal abilities due to his ghost's death, was essentially possessed by Savathun, something that the community had been theorizing about for months. By exorcising her from Osiris, she was set free and he fell into a coma. When the season ended and the next expansion released, the first thing players heard upon opening Destiny 2 was Savathun's song as part of the Witch Queen theme. Her theme even mimics the grandiosity of Oryx's themes, further cementing her power as players are subconsciously reminded of him. By building up Savathun's arrival musically, the Destiny team retroactively showed players that she was involved in a myriad of major events over the past few years. Her influence was all over the Shadowkeep expansion, including the Garden of Salvation raid and Pit of Heresy dungeon. Because players didn't fully understand what the leitmotif meant at the time of the expansion, it went mostly overlooked, but once players were explicitly shown what Savathun's song sounded like, they began noticing it littered throughout the music. Due to this, Savathun immediately became a much more intimidating villain, as she had been working against humanity in secret for years. So much of what players had gone through was a direct result of her plotting. This type of musical storytelling is something that I have personally only ever seen in Destiny, which exemplifies the care and thought that Michael Salvatore and company put into the soundtrack. As someone who's been playing Destiny for quite a long time, I can think of so many more instances of good soundtracking throughout the series. Sepix Prime versus Sepix Redux, for example. But I find that these three examples truly demonstrate the power of the game's soundtrack, whether it be creating community, building intimidation, or developing a story. I highly recommend listening to all of the soundtrack albums, as they all have wonderful and complex tracks that enhance the storytelling experience of the game. I'll leave you with a personal favorite of mine, a swashbuckling, adventurous track from the pirate-themed dungeon Grasp of Avarice.